Comrades and friends, I am pleased to bring the fraternal greetings of the Parti de l'Égalité Socialiste of France to this International May Day rally. We are celebrating on this day of the international working class the global resurgence of the class struggle, which is now shaking all of Europe. In France, the Yellow Vests have protested for nearly 6 months now against the austerity policies, the militarism, and the violent police repression of President Emmanuel Macron's government. This movement of hundreds of thousands of workers, as well as self-employed people and small business people, emerged on social media. It developed entirely outside all of the traditional institutions of official politics. The trade unions and established parties who for decades have claimed to represent the left, like the French Communist Party or the new Anti-Capitalist Party, reacted with open hostility to the launching of a movement which they initially branded as neo-fascist rioting. The Yellow Vests demand the resignation of an illegitimate president of the Republic who is only the president of the rich. Supported by the vast majority of workers, they are confronting the French police state, which has arrested over 6,000 Yellow Vests and wounded thousands, including dozens who lost eyes to beanbag bullets or hands torn off by police grenades. And since millions of Algerian workers and youth began to protest, demanding the fall of the military dictatorship, tens of thousands of Algerians in France are protesting in solidarity since the resignation of Algerian President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Class struggle is rising across Europe, with Berlin's mass transit strike in Germany, the one-day Belgian national strike, or the Albanian student strikes to demand lower tuition. To the east, Polish unions are now trying to strangle the first national teachers' strike since the Stalinist restoration of capitalism in Poland in 1989. This strike has staggered Poland's far-right government. To the south, in Portugal, nurses organize strikes on social media independently of unions tied to the social democratic governments. And as dockers, truck drivers, refinery workers, and teachers also go on strike. These struggles vindicate the Trotskyist perspective of the International Committee of the Fourth International, the ICFI, the rejection of the diktat of the banks, demands for profound economic change, and moods favorable to irreconcilable struggle dominate in the working class. The Stalinist dissolution of the Soviet Union and the restoration of capitalism in 1991 did not mark the end of history and the ultimate triumph of capitalism. The era in which these events could suffice to suppress the class struggle is over. After 3 decades of imperialist war in Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria, and a decade of deep economic crisis since the 2008 crash, the specter of the revolutionary overthrow of capitalism by the conscious political action of the working class again haunts the ruling class. The magazine Le Monde Diplomatique described the financial aristocracy's reaction to the Yellow Vest movement as, and I quote, fear, not of losing an election, of failing to pass a given social cut, or of the stock market losses, but rather of insurrection, revolt, and destitution. For a half-century, the French elite had not felt such fear. Businessmen are afraid of, quote, ending up with their heads on pikes, writes the financial magazine L'Opinion, and they speak among themselves of comparisons to the French general strikes of 1936 and 1968. After 6 months of Yellow Vest protests, it is clear there will be no reformist outcome of the class struggle. Neither Macron, who declared his admiration for the fascist dictator Philippe Pétain, nor the torturers of the Algerian military dictatorship, who killed hundreds of thousands during the Algerian civil war of the 1990s, will give anything to the workers. The alternative for facing the workers are not reform or revolution, but revolution or counter-revolution. After mass strikes erupted in Algeria, Macron called for sending the army to help police the Yellow Vest protests. He gave the soldiers authorization to shoot. It was the first time that the French army was deployed against social protests since the insurrectionary strikes of 1947 and 1948, when the capitalist class drowned in blood and mass sackings, uprisings of the working class against fascist rule. It is not so hard to understand some of the calculations of Macron's government. Workers around the world have seen the example of the revolutionary uprising of the Egyptian workers in 2011. 3 years of heroic struggle ended in a bloody US-backed coup by General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in 2013. Similarly, the Algerian regime is biding its time and preparing repression, coordinated this time with Paris. But to crush the Algerian workers, Paris first wants to make sure that such repression will not provoke an uncontrolled social explosion at home. Already, 20,000 Algerians are marching in France, and Macron hopes with the army and the police to frighten and beat the yellow vests into submission. This international May Day rally, organized by the ICFI, is the most politically conscious response of the world working class. The way forward is a mobilization of the broad mass of the working class in an international struggle for state power and to build socialism. But to mobilize the workers in such a struggle, the workers need a new revolutionary leadership. And the ICFI must be built as the revolutionary leadership of the proletariat. The Egyptian revolution was an unforgettable lesson, paid for with the blood of thousands, that militant protests are not enough to overcome entrenched ruling elites. Workers need their own independent action committees and, above all, the political perspective of a Trotskyist vanguard. Workers in struggle, including many yellow vests, feel ever more sharply the need for organizations, but they cannot organize through the old bureaucracies. The resurgence of the class struggle has not come from maneuvers of the trade unions or those of parties linked to Stalinism or social democracy. The Yellow Vest movement, as the PES reported in France, for its part denounced the unions and allied political parties as opportunists, cowards, and above all, as privileged elements paid off by business to strangle their struggles and prevent the revolution that they want to see occur. We're passing through the initial stages of a great counteroffensive of revolutionary struggle by the international working class. And these initial strikes and protests in Europe are the sign of far greater struggles of the working class that are to come. The movement that can give them a revolutionary perspective is the ICFI, and the perspective that is opening to workers being politically radicalized across the European continent is to struggle to build the United Socialist States of Europe.